Having a Reservoir Dogs style spin-off show of Andy and Kyle just murdering all the Chucky dolls, not a bad idea. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Also, if you have anything to say about the video, any comments about the episode, Chucky's episode, how the series is going so far, leave those in the comments as well. I'm a little bit behind. Work, life. I haven't even seen Ghostbusters yet, which just doesn't make sense. But seeing it tonight. But I wanted to get this out for this latest episode of Chucky called Cape Queer. This is an interesting episode. Up until this point, I have thoroughly enjoyed every single episode of Chucky. This is the first episode where I was like, this isn't quite doing it for me. There are parts that I like, but as a whole, this one doesn't work too much for me. And the biggest reason is basically this episode of a series called Chucky has very little Chucky in it. The episode also does the cardinal sin of introducing or reintroducing a lot of characters that we had not established in the first 5 episodes. So Jake, Devin, and Lexi are pretty much put on the side burner or sideline to introduce characters that yes we have had some history with in the past, but we have in these first 5 episodes have had no connection with. So we get a lot more Tiffany and Nika, and then they sort of fold in uh, Andy and Kyle, who have been on this very interesting hunt for all of the remaining spirits and remaining places that Chucky has put his spirit in and all the dolls. So, in a very cool little sequence that I think opens the show well, we have Andy and Kyle from his stepsister from Child's Play 2 connecting the universe. It's like the Marvel universe here with Chucky, connecting the universe, and they are going around from home to home. They're pretending that they're census folks, and going to the home, and they're like, "Hey, parents, how's it going?" And then like they talk to the kid, and like, "Kid, do you have any new toys?" All of the toys, every toy that you have. And she winds up eventually telling them that she has a doll named Charlie or Charles, I believe. She goes to get him and comes out, and he's like, "Hi, I'm," and he has to remember his name. And then they unload on him in a Reservoir Dog style shot, just like put every bullet, just scar the hell out of that kid. That kid's fucked. That kid is messed up for life. But before you get a cool like "fuck you, Andy," it's interesting that these two characters have been doing this for a long period of time, and as they're sort of driving away, Kyle is like, "Hey, we're doing this. We got one more to get," and she's like, "Well, you have one more doll to get. There's a possibility that it's inhuman." So Andy's aware that Nika has some of that in hers, has a one version or part of the soul of Chucky in her. Uh, but it is also sort of leading to and pointing to that Andy might have some issues because of, if you've seen Cold of Chucky, which I have told you multiple times, especially the way that they're going with this episode and the way they're going with this series, you need to. The last 2 movies have shown that Andy has had some psychological issues from what happened to him as a kid, and he had a moment where you get flashbacks of it here, where he has had a head of Chucky, one of the dolls, and is just torturing it, putting a flamethrower to it. He gets off on it, and he's like, "I love hearing that scream of the flesh." I was like, "Andy, you might just be as bad as Charles, because that's kind of a fucked up thing to say." Them doing their thing is the primary part of the episode, and then you get a lot of Tiffany and Nika. And Tiffany and Nika in this episode, Nika has basically regained control. And in the last episode, Nika was going back and forth between her having control and the soul that Chucky has put into her having control. Um, but it is clear that Nika is in power now. And I thought last episode, I thought anytime that Tiffany was around is when Chucky sort of rose, but that is disproven in this episode. Um, Nika tries to keep on her ruse that she is still Chucky. So she is sitting there talking to Tiffany and having a grand old conversation, pretending to be Chucky, but Tiffany is already caught on. Tiffany's aware. She's like, you're not Chucky. One, you're too nice." But she's also stabbed Nika in the leg moments before, and has a knife just chilling in her. And she's like, "Well, one, You don't talk like Chucky. You don't sound like Chucky. He doesn't. You don't bet or do anything like Chucky. Two, I stabbed you in your leg ages ago, and you felt nothing because when she is not in Chucky mode, she is in full paraplegic situation, which also leads you to believe that it becomes supernatural to the point that if you have another soul in you that can walk, you can walk. So something with her body is would be allowed to have her walk if some type of surgery happened, because it just seems that's a very far-fetched thing, but she can feel anything she can based on a soul clicking in or clicking out. But in that, Tiffany is like, I don't mind having you, because you're better than Chucky. I'd rather have you than him, which I think is a load of crap. That couple, while they hate each other and love to hate each other, I think there is still a semblance of the two of them always having to be sort of kindred spirits together. So I think it's a setup, but we'll get there. She does knock out Nika, and then ends up going to buy the childhood home that Chucky used to live in, and that's where she sort of delivers like, "I like you more than this," but that sort of establishes those characters. That's half the episode. Is the two of them. Is the Andy and Kyle stuff and the Nika and Tiffany stuff. Which leaves very little room for Jake, Devin, and Lexi. Because there's also another story with Bree, Jake's aunt. Bree finally discloses to her family that she has cancer. And you get a sad moment of her hugging and trying to explain that to Junior. Probably probably the part of this episode that hit me the hardest, because I've been Junior in this situation. So I was like, oh yeah, this hits hard. I had someone, my mother, tell me that she had cancer. So like, it hit, and it worked. It was a really well established shot. She then goes to her therapy that she's been doing long term for some time. Junior goes with her, and he's in the car listening to his headphones. He's just chilling. He's like, but he wants to be around her as much as he possibly can. It seems like there's still something Bree is not telling everyone else. The therapist knows, but we don't really get that revealed, because in this, she comes out of her therapy appointment, sitting in the hallway, about to make a call to her husband, I believe, and Chucky is there. This is the first time that we really get to see Chucky in this episode, and he pushes a cart out towards her to basically have her fly through a window, which I forgot what floor they're on, but it's high enough that when she falls, she's dying. So the cart drops down first to the ground, and Junior's in the car with his headphones. He sees it, and then splash on his car, and he looks face forward, and his mom's face is through the front windshield, and she is dead. That is a scarring thing, and back to back to find out that your mom had cancer and then she's dead from what appears to be and what is believed to be, once the therapist talks to the family, is to be suicide due to depression. Even though her husband is like, I thought you said she was fine. I thought you said she was getting through this. So that's one of two characters that have been sort of established in this series that are gone in this show. I'll get to the latter, the other, in just a bit. So then the Jake, Lexi, and Devin portion of it all. Not much happens with them. This feels very much, for their characters, much of a bottleneck episode. I think we have 2 more episodes left to finish off the season. And so they didn't really have there's no really movement for them. They're pretty much stuck. What we get at the very beginning of the episode is the 3 of them are in school, and their high school teacher is arrested. Mrs. Fairchild, the only one who's had sort of Jake's back. I don't know how they came to that conclusion. And that's one of the big things that kind of just took me out. There's nothing that leads me to believe that is who they would go after. I get the ones that may have happened around or in the school, because she did have access to Chucky, and if she's putting those pieces together, that's what she's sort of doing. But the ones that are happening like in homes or it doesn't make sense. I don't know how A, B, C, but we already know how well this. In Hackensack, the police ain't very good. But they arrest her, take her away, and the kids are like, no, that's wrong. And Devin tells his mom, like, no, that's not it. And she's like, well, why? He can't quite tell her, because if you say it's a killer doll, she's not gonna believe you. So they kind of just let it go. They do get in touch with Andy and Kyle for the first time to sort of reconnect. And this is the point where Andy called him in the very first episode. He just finally is getting back out. So it's clear that in the back episodes, these last two, that they're going to sort of all converge together. But that doesn't happen in this episode. Everybody's sort of separated. There's a pretty cool moment where Devin admits to his mom that he has feelings for Jake. And that makes her a little happy because she can, one, take Jake off as a suspect. She thinks, I don't know how those correlate, but she starts to feel more comfortable with him. And Devin tells Jake so. And then they're all at the house trying to sort of set up this plan to trap Chucky based on some information that they've got. We all know that, man. It ain't gonna work. But they have it all set up. They have this elaborate plan with this doll in the middle and like stuff trying to trap it. It's intricate. It fails miserably. It's Chucky's 7,000 steps ahead of them. And so calamity and comedy ensues, and Chucky attacks Devin's mom, who shows up on the scene pretty late in the game. And Chucky jumps out and surprises her and bites her, and then winds up having her fall down the stairs and snaps her neck and breaks basically her upper torso. It's going in the incorrect way. And the kids run. Chucky runs out the house. Kids run down to see him. Lexi and Jake kind of peek to see where he goes, but he's gone. And Devin notices his mom's dead, and they all sort of console her. That's how their story ends. So another major character is off the board that we have spent so much time in these first 5 episodes establishing. So truthfully, the only major characters that we have from the beginning of the series are Jake, Devin, Lexi, and Junior and his dad. Everybody else is gone off the board. We haven't really seen Lexi's little sister in a bit too, which is a bit concerning. I have a feeling, one, just because of the way that she acted anyway, I have a feeling that night that Chucky put his soul into the doll, I think he put a second piece into Lexi. I just think that it just doesn't make sense that he would only put it in the doll, knowing that people are kind of after that doll, and that he does now have the power to split himself. I feel like in that moment we're going to get a flashback at some point where he did that one, and then he's like, well, I'm going to do you too, just in case. Which leads a little bit to the cool flashback sequence that happens in this episode. There's a sequence where Fiona Dorff is playing Charles again, young, and they're buying a new car. And the scene itself doesn't really establish anything. The car doesn't really mean anything for the entire thing. I don't know. I can't recall. I haven't watched Child's Play enough to know if that's still the same car that he has at the beginning of Child's Play. They're trying to interconnect so much stuff. That is something that I am not that well versed in to know. But when they do get in here, they establish their rapport. They establish their back and forth, how much they love the bloodlust. But as they're pulling off, Tiffany's driving, and Charles Lee Ray pulls out a voodoo book, which sort of establishes the threat, because we haven't had any point to this where he would connect to that. And she's like, what is that? He's like, oh, it's a new hobby. But we all know that hobby sort of leads to the seeds of everything that we have going on today. This is where that impetus to start voodoo and transfer your soul and spirit to everybody else, it begins here. And that's the episode. Not a lot happens. You're establishing characters that an audience for 5 episodes had not heard of with Andy and Kyle. If they had not been a part of this series before, you've made a pretty big handicap for folks. You now made this show that you have to be invested. I am, so it doesn't bother me at all, but I know those folks that are just watching Chucky or just watch like 1 and 2 and are jumping in. There's a lot of hoops you got to get through to make this all make sense for you. I also think it's very much of a bottleneck episode. So look, you can't win them all. I think having an episode of Chucky where Chucky is only in like two scenes, Chucky as a doll is only in 2 scenes. We get some Charles Lee Ray, but that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the bloodlust, and I'm here for that doll. So I think the next 2 episodes are going to make up for it, and we definitely had in the beginning. But this episode, just because where it fits and how much they have to do to further build the world and connect the world back together, you can feel it, and it's just not as clean as everything else, or fun as the rest of the episodes. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy the series as a whole. And I think if you watch them back to back or watch them in hour chunks, it works better together. But this episode as a standalone, leaves a little bit to be desired. But those are my thoughts on Cape Courier. What did you guys think about this episode of Chucky? Go ahead and leave your comments and thoughts below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, here on YouTube. Anywhere that plays podcasts, we're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.